Have you ever asked for advice and then argued with every answer you were given? Have you ever gone looking for wisdom while secretly already believing you had it? Today, I want to tell you the story of a proud young scholar named Kenzo who traveled for weeks to learn from a monk everyone called wise, only to discover that he wasn't actually ready to learn anything at all, and an old teacher who showed him why, using nothing but a simple cup of tea. If you've ever felt stuck, unable to grow no matter how much you read or ask or study, stay until the end, because what happens in this tea room might be the exact reason why.
Kenzo was 28 years old, and by every measure the capital respected, he was a brilliant man. He had studied under 3 great scholars. He had memorized more philosophy than most men read in a lifetime. He had won more debates in the capital's great hall than anyone could count, and he had grown rather fond of winning them. When he heard of Master Rin, an old monk living in a remote mountain monastery said to hold a wisdom deeper than any book, Kenzo did not hesitate. He packed his finest robes, his sharpest arguments, and set out on the long climbing path, not entirely to learn, if he was honest with himself, but to see whether this old monk's wisdom could actually stand against his own. They say no one leaves an argument with him unchanged, Kenzo muttered to himself on the path, smiling. We'll see about that.
Kenzo arrived at the monastery gates just as evening mist was settling over the mountain. A young monk led him silently through a stone courtyard to a small wooden tea room where Master Rin sat waiting, perfectly still. Kenzo bowed, briefly, more out of habit than humility, and sat across from the old monk. Master Rin, he began, I've come a long way to learn from you. I should tell you, I already have a strong foundation. I've studied the classics, debated the great scholars of the capital, and formed my own conclusions on most matters of the mind and spirit. I'm hoping you can refine what I already understand. Master Rin said nothing. He simply reached for a small iron kettle. Kenzo continued, filling the silence the way he always did. He spoke of his teachers, his debates, his theories on stillness and suffering and truth, theory after theory, opinion after opinion, each one polished from years of practice defending it. Master Rin listened without interrupting and began preparing 2 cups of tea.
Master Rin lifted the kettle and began to pour tea into Kenzo's cup. Kenzo, mid-sentence, barely noticed, still explaining his theory on the nature of true stillness, gesturing with one hand while the old monk poured with the other. The cup filled steadily. Master Rin's hand did not slow. The tea reached the rim of the cup. Master Rin kept pouring. Kenzo's sentence trailed off as he watched, confused, as the hot tea began spilling over the sides of the cup, running across the low wooden table, dripping onto the floor between them. Master, the cup is full, Kenzo said, half laughing, reaching to stop him. It's overflowing. Master Rin did not stop pouring. Master Rin finally set the kettle down, unhurried, and looked directly at Kenzo for the first time since he'd sat down. Like this cup, he said calmly, you are full. Kenzo blinked. Full of what? Your own opinions, your own conclusions, your own certainty about what is true and what is not. Master Rin gestured to the tea still spreading slowly across the table. You arrived here already decided about most things, and then you asked me to pour wisdom into you as though there were still room. Kenzo opened his mouth to respond, a reflex, a counter-argument already forming, the way it always did. Master Rin raised one hand, gently. You see, he said, almost smiling. Even now, I have not finished speaking, and already you are preparing to argue with the cup about how full it is.
Kenzo sat with that for a long, uncomfortable moment. He thought of every debate he had won in the capital's great hall, how each victory had felt less like discovering truth and more like defending a wall he'd built years ago and never once questioned. He thought of every teacher he had studied under, and how much of what they'd said he had quietly filed away as already known, without truly sitting with it. He thought of the long climb up this mountain, how he had spent most of it rehearsing arguments instead of watching the path. "I came here to learn," Kenzo said slowly, "and I have not stopped talking since I arrived." Master Rin said nothing. He simply began, gently, to clean the spilled tea from the table with a cloth, unhurried, without judgment, the way a man cleans something he has cleaned 1,000 times before. When the table was clean, Master Rin set a fresh, empty cup in front of Kenzo. "An empty cup," he said, "is not empty because it lacks value. It is empty because it still has room." He lifted the kettle once more. "I am not asking you to forget what you know, Kenzo. Your studies, your debates, your years of learning, none of that needs to be thrown away. I am only asking you to set it down for a moment, just long enough to let something new find room to land." Kenzo looked at the empty cup for a long moment. Then, for the first time since he'd arrived, he said nothing at all. He simply nodded and waited. Master Ren poured. The tea rose steadily toward the rim. This time, it stopped exactly there. Kenzo stayed at the monastery far longer than he had planned. He did not abandon his scrolls or his years of study, but he began each conversation differently now, setting his conclusions down beside him, rather than carrying them into every room, leaving space to actually hear what was being said, rather than preparing his next argument. Master Rin never asked him to believe anything. He simply kept pouring, a little at a time, into a cup that finally had room. When Kenzo eventually returned to the capital, his old colleagues noticed a difference they couldn't quite name. He still debated, he still taught, but he asked more questions than he used to, and he actually seemed to listen to the answers. One young student, eager and full of his own certainty, once challenged him fiercely in front of a crowded hall. Kenzo simply smiled and offered him tea. "I want to speak to you directly now. How often do you ask for advice you've already decided not to take? How often do you read something new only to measure it against what you already believe, rather than actually letting it in? Growth doesn't happen when we add more opinions on top of the ones we already have. It happens when we're willing to set a few of them down, just for a moment, and leave room for something we didn't already know. You don't have to throw away what you've learned. You only have to stop pouring it back into every cup someone offers you." If this story reminded you to listen a little more closely, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. We are all, at times, a cup too full to be poured into. The wisest thing we can do is notice and set a little of it down.